Hi, I'm Megan.
I'm Colin, and this is Pet Sitter Confessional,
an open and honest discussion about life as a pet sitter.
brought to you by Time to Pet and Pet Perennials. Large animal and farm care is a topic that many of us don't give a second thought to because it's not very common in the circles of pet care. However, there are an awful lot of lessons that we can take from learning about this side of pet care. So today we're really excited to have Ariah Transmeier on to talk about how she got started in large animal and farm care 17 years ago, how she dialed in her clients, and how she uses word of mouth and her reputation to get referrals and continue her business. Let's get started.
Hey, Colin. Thank you so much for having me on today. As you said, my name is Ariah. I am originally from North Texas and lived there for a little over 7 years before moving to Georgia, and spent 15 years living in the metropolitan area before moving back to Texas, where I currently live with my husband, our two rescue black cats, Rook and Molotov, and my horse, Marcus.
You have been involved in pet sitting for the last several years. So how did you get started?
Yep. So I've been pet sitting probably close to 17 years now. I first started with smaller house sitting jobs with like dogs, cats, turtles, what have you. And a next door neighbor actually traveled quite a bit. And so she started trusting me with her 5 cats. And from then it just kind of bloomed into this thing where she told somebody who told somebody else. And after a while, I was staying at a couple different houses for a lot of different people. And then as I started riding horses a little bit more seriously, I would get connected with trainers and people who would need favors and things. So I started taking care of farms. So horses, cows, goats, chickens, to get a little bit more ride time. And then ultimately I started doing it for pay.
What I find interesting about that is that it grew organically from a close-knit group of people and kind of expanded outward through this word of mouth. And I really feel like that's one of the ways that tends to be underestimated of just how important that is. And I can imagine even more so when you're coming and taking care of people's prized horses and these really beautiful homes and estates almost.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of people that have, these big farms and have, upwards of 300 acres, they can't just, bring in somebody and give them their gate code and, here's the keys. It's, it's a lot of land. And I think it is a lot of responsibility. And especially if you can get like a referral from your next door neighbor, that does go a long way, especially in the community that I frequent. There are a lot of people, and the horse world is large, but it's also very small. So being kind to your neighbor goes a very long way.
Well, I'm sure you two have your background and interest in horses really goes a long way to selling yourself to people who are interested in your services.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm going on 22 years of horse life. So it's been a passion forever. I've loved horses since before I could walk. I was sitting on a horse. And I think that being able to understand an animal that is, sometimes 3 or 4 times your size is definitely a big, big deal for a lot of people. And if you can kind of figure out where that animal is going, like what they're thinking, how they, just what their daily routine is, and being able to insert yourself into that person's house or farm or whatever, and just, okay, well, I'm going to pick up the schedule and do it that way. It's way less stress for everybody. I mean, the owner, the animal, or whatever you're taking care of.
Now, you had said that when you originally started, it was a way to also get more ride time. What else was it about farm sitting that you were interested in?
I am probably, I'm mostly an introvert. So I feel like I can connect a little bit more with animals. And then just even to connect with a horse or a cow, even goats. It's super fun to just sit outside and spend time with these animals where you can like sit in the pasture and just observe them. And sometimes they come up and hang out in your space, and sometimes they do their own thing, but it's very relaxing, and it really just recharges me, while also being able to give the animals a connection without being super hands-on all the time.
Well, and we keep saying farm sitting and large animal care here, but I guess those terms might mean different things to different people. So when you say those terms, when you're talking to those clients, what exact kind of services are you providing?
Yeah, so normally a farm sitting, if it's not an exclusive farm, I think, to me that means that the house has acreage, so maybe like anywhere from 5 to 300. I mean, there are like farms with over 1,000 acres, but the biggest I've ever done is 300 acres. And so it's if they have cows on the property, or they do hay on the property, like what does that mean when you're staying there? Like, how are you up at dawn, taking care of plants, like making sure that animals are fed on time? Cows have hay, so you're taking the tractor out and getting the round bales and putting them out for cows. Are you feeding horses? Are the horses show horses? Are they hobby horses, retirement horses? Do you have to watch them like a hawk? do you just throw food out there and you go back into the house? It's hopefully that's not too much, but it's a lot of different things to me. I think a lot of people call their estate a farm. So you really have to go and see what your client is wanting you to take care of. Because some people say, well, I want somebody to come to my house and feed my horses twice a day. And that's fine. But do I have to, feed Fluffy, 7 different supplements, and I have to soak it 12 hours in advance so that Fluffy eats it? Those are important things to think about.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were describing all this process, what kind of prep work and kind of questions you have to do. Because, I've been given a booklet to care for a cat for a weekend from the client's preferences. Do you get those kind of instructions from the clients, or do you find yourself having to ask very specific questions?
Yeah, I used to just ask them to write it down for me and leave it on the counter or the fridge, but then you would get, non-descriptive directions. And so I've kind of come up with a template that I'll send a new client and be like, hey, this is kind of what I use for your type of farm or your type of animals. If this is not what you're looking for, let's get together and make a plan for what Fluffy needs, Because I have to know, like, if you're saying like, oh, they eat, in the morning. Well, do they eat at 5 a.m. or do they eat at 7 a.m.? Because I feel like there's morning and then there's like, crack of dawn. So there are differences. And some people don't think about that.
Right. And it takes those kind of experiences and questions to kind of draw that out, because to them it's really no different. It's just what they do. But when you're bringing in somebody new and somebody who doesn't know the routine, those differences, who on the outset, it doesn't really sound that big of a deal, but it absolutely is, and can really throw off the routine of, especially of a horse or large farm animal who's used to certain things.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I like to do, which I've heard you guys talk about it too, is I usually try and either come at a feeding time when I meet the client. So like I'll meet them, but then I'll come back and do maybe an evening feed time. So I can watch them feed their cows, chickens, goats, whatever. And then just ask questions along the way. Okay, so you just picked up this much hay. Is that exactly how much you want me to do? Is there, some people weigh their hay. There's there's all kinds of way that you can do it. So I think that that's really important. And I think it gives the owner a sense of like, okay, this person is serious. They're going to do it the way that I've asked them to do it.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. Yeah, especially if doing the meet and greet during those times, because then you really get a sense and a feel for how that is supposed to flow and what it's supposed to look like, and just being as observant as possible. And I know when we do meet and greets, I go ahead and tell the clients I'm going to be taking some notes. I hope that's okay, or something like that, so that I can annotate what they're doing and why they're doing it, and catching up on. Is that amount of hay appropriate, or is that a guesstimate? Like that's, again, it's those little details that you wouldn't think is going to make that big a difference. But if they're actively weighing it, they're very interested on the exact amount that their horse is getting.
Right. And there are a lot of you think about how it's easy for some dog breeds to get overweight. And so, some owners do have special dog food. Well, it's kind of the same at least for horses. I think there are metabolic horses. And if you give, an extra 3 pounds of hay, like that's a vet visit.
Wow.
And usually it's an emergency vet visit, of course. So,
of course,
animals never get sick during business hours.
Yeah. No. Why would they? That would make it too convenient, right? Well, what does an emergency prep plan look like for you when you are at somebody's farm? How do you take into account all those circumstances and handle, a kind of emergency that could come up?
Usually I make sure that I'm familiar with all of the local departments in the area for that county or town, like the fire, police, where is the major hospital for people, where is the major vet hospital, who is the regular vet. If it's emergency hours, do you use a different vet? Because some vets won't do emergency hours. If I have to transport the animal, I do ask them to leave a truck and trailer. If not, who do I call to transport the animal? All of obviously the neighbors' numbers, and if any of them are available at odd hours, I usually do call the neighbors if it's my first time staying there, to let them know what kind of car I drive, and that I'll be doing the farm for X amount of days, just in case the owner, they might have forgotten. And a lot of people are very close and they know that some strange person is driving into their neighbor's farm. That's not okay.
Yeah.
So, protection for the farm. I mean, there's some people have gate codes, some people have house alarms. Do you keep a safe, a gun safe? Do you, what do you usually see on the farm at night? Is there a lot of activity? Do you live somewhere? I did a farm that had an event venue next door, and they ended up doing a lot more security because they had some people getting lost and driving into the farm at night. So just everything that you can possibly think of, it's probably happened at the farm.
Have you heard of Time to Pet? Doug from Bad to the Bone Pet Care has this to say.
Time to Pet has made managing my team and clients so much easier. Our clients love the easy-to-use app and scheduling features, and our sitters love being able to have all of their information organized and easily accessible. My favorite feature is the instant messaging. By keeping conversations on Time to Pet, we are able to monitor our team and ensure nothing ever falls through the cracks.
If you are looking for new pet sitting software, give Time to Pet a try. Our listeners can get 50% off your first 3 months by going to timetopet.com/confessional. How would you describe your typical client? You've mentioned the difference between like a racehorse versus a show horse versus a hobby farm. Where do you find most of your clients fall?
I would say most of them, it's kind of the hobby farm. So they have maybe some cows to keep their ag exemption current on their farm. And then maybe they have chickens, dogs, and then some sort of larger animal. So maybe a horse or a llama or some goats. And then usually they'll have some sort of security system. So I think it's the 5 to 10 acre farms are what I see the most of. It's just usually a family that wanted to live in the country, and now they have all of these things, but they still want to travel. So they need to have somebody they trust, and that's fairly available to come and stay. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like having somebody stay at your house and the security of knowing that they're there if something were to happen.
So beyond word of mouth, how have you found effective ways of advertising and reaching those clients?
I really haven't formally advertised anywhere.
Wow.
To be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
I don't. I've had a couple people ask me about like if they could share my name with other people. And so I'm always open to meeting new people. And as long as there's a connection somewhere, I've had a couple of current clients. They saw an ad on Nextdoor and they sent that person my number. So I think that's like the most formal advertising I've ever gotten. But
sure. Well, and as you mentioned, the world of horse owners, horse farms, and hobby farms, like it's big, but it's still pretty small too. And when you have a niche like that for your business, it doesn't take much for word of mouth to completely flood that market and get your name out there, because they all know each other, or at least are tangentially aware of who all else is out there. And once somebody's name gets out there, like that's extremely powerful.
Right. Yeah. And I think surrounding yourself with the right people, like you said, if I go and I meet a new client for house sitting and I feel that it's not a right match, or if I'm going to have some issues taking care of the farm or whatever, I try and be open and honest in advance. Like, I really appreciate you reaching out to me. I don't think that this is the opportunity for me. I try not to have any hard feelings or animosity with any of my clients. And I think that's been the best policy for me, rather than trying to do the job and it not being 100%, because I feel like I do good work as a farm sitter. So I think knowing your situation going in is going to be really big, because everybody does know everybody. So if they feel that you didn't give what they asked for, they're going to tell whoever recommended you, like, well, she didn't do a good job for me, and I don't know what that was about. And we all know that negative reviews seem to make their way around a lot faster than the good ones.
That's for sure. But coming in and knowing your limits and setting expectations and not being afraid to say no, like that's doing several things. It's making sure that the client gets the best care possible, because you are recognizing, ooh, this isn't the best fit for me. I'm not going to, be able to meet these needs or these or whatever. But it's also, as you mentioned there, it's protecting your reputation on the back end of going into something, being over your head and not being able to do 100% or meet the job expectations as you thought, and then having this stain on your reputation as people are talking about you. So it really is both sides of this coin of going, well, I'm saying no, not because, I don't like you or I'm offended or anything like that. I'm saying no so that you get the best care possible and I keep doing the ones that I know I'm going to be able to do the best at. So on that, when you're approached by a client or somebody who's interested in your services, what would you say no to? Or do you have any, as far as like animals or requests for farm care that you would not be okay with?
I think that I'm pretty much open to everything. I don't, I have done llamas one time. I'm not a huge fan. I love animals. I love all animals, but man, they are tough to win over. A lot of spit.
No.
So it has to be the right situation. Also knowing like how many animals does the person have. I'm usually comfortable with large animals. I think my limit would be 10 to 12. And then after that, I think it's kind of a time and compensation and all of that. I feel like I want to do the best job I can, but I'm only one person.
Sure.
So I have had people like kind of horse rescue type situations that had like 30 horses and it was just like going to be impossible for one person to do it all. So I'm happy to, come out and meet and talk to, everybody that I talk with. And I do a preliminary phone call and just to kind of see what they think. And there's also, I think I put a limit of 1 hour from my home, even though I'm staying there, like it's still a good distance for me to drive. So should anything like come up at my house, I want to be able to come back and deal with that. So
those kind of things are something that you kind of figure out over time. Like I'm sure the 1 hour distance, maybe that has or hasn't changed over the years, but it just becomes part of, how do I actually want to be running my business? How do I actually want to set this up so that I still have a life outside of it and able to do things? And these are those barriers that we talk a lot about of setting so that going into when someone sends you a request, you can start matching this up and going, oh, it meets this, oh, doesn't meet this. Okay, this is probably going to be a no-go. And if you do that ahead of time, it really streamlines that process and takes a lot of, for us at least, takes a lot of the anxiety off of knowing whether to say no or yes sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's just something I've learned over the years, like how to, like, what do I want my drive time to be from the city or whatever, or does the person want me to stay on the farm 24/7? Most of the farms are 24/7 deals. A lot of them understand that, like, I'm going to go out to dinner or whatever on the weekends and that's fine. But, most farms are just 24/7 jobs and that's what it is. And I think that, like you said, when you go into it knowing that, it's way less stress for everybody.
Now, thinking about, you've said this kind of limit on animals, but it's, over 10, that still sounds like a lot to me. And then if you're there for 24 hours, how do you find pricing for the services that you're offering?
Yeah, I think that I kind of set myself up with a day rate. If the owner or the client pushes back on the day rate, then I will offer an hourly rate. the hourly rate is going to be more expensive. But I just I like to have a couple options for them. Like, that's fine if you just want to do an hourly rate and I don't stay overnight. Or you can do the all-in rate where I charge you per day, and it's a whole day, whether I'm only doing stuff in the morning or only doing in the evening. I've tried before to just charge like a little more a la carte, and it got to be a little out of control. So I want the owner to be happy, but also I need to be happy too. I want to make sure that I'm enjoying my time with the animals and it's not stressful for me, because I feel like if the person is stressed, it will translate into the animal, and that's not what I want for anyone.
When you are talking about pricing for your clients, do you feel like you have to push on the services and really sell the benefits? Or do you find a lot of people immediately see, oh, this is actually very beneficial and I can see how this is going to be good and I see the value in this?
Yeah, I don't really have to sell myself on it. I tell them, this is the rate and this is what's included in it. And if they have issues with it, that's fine. But I feel like I've set a fair price and I do the job well. So I don't want to sound rude or pushy, but I don't really negotiate because I feel like that's your animal's care. And I think that a lot of people do understand. So I don't really have a lot of pushback. Again,
if you recognize the value and if you're spreading through word of mouth, people who are contacting you are already somewhat interested, at least, right? And they have a real need. And they're going to be able to tell very quickly if you're going to be able to fill that for them or not. And there's, from a business perspective, as far as haggling on prices, you have to make it worth your time. And as you mentioned earlier, this, I had this big a la carte options for people and it was piecemeal and I had all these things moving. But when things start to get very overly complicated, it can be really hard sometimes to figure out, okay, now what am I charging this person and why am I charging them that? And am I actually making money? So to go to more of just two options, hourly or a flat rate, it just simplifies the entire process and it's less headache on your side and on the client side too.
Right. Yeah. I have this big Excel spreadsheet of just each client. And then I wrote out what I was charging them. And then I wrote out what they were having me do. And it was eye-opening because you don't really think about it when they're just paying you your lump sum and then you go about your business. But it's when you sit down and you actually go through how much care you're providing for these animals, don't discount yourself.
Yeah, we've had people go, wow, you charge that for a full day? And we go, yeah, it's only for a full day. The hourly rate for this, if you really broke it down for a lot of services and for a lot of pet care providers, hourly, you're really not making as much as you think you are, but you get that big lump sum. And you go, wow, look at all this money. Look what I got made. I made it. But if you actually would break it down for the number of hours of care you're giving, all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's actually not, it's not worth it.
Right. And it's hard because I know that these animals are family to a lot of people. So I don't want to, tell anybody that their animal is worth X amount of dollars. That's so hard to do, is to put a price tag on, the animal that you love.
It is. And I know for the more traditional pet sitting, the dog and cat world, it takes a little bit of convincing sometimes to say, okay, well, you have this pet. Part of pet ownership is paying for their care. And that includes pet sitting and dog walking. If you go to somebody who has a hobby farm, it's, okay, you have this, and to maintain it, part of maintaining it is paying somebody to do that while you're away.
Right. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of one-time expenses that go into farms, or, like I only spend X amount of dollars every 3 weeks. And so it's sometimes hard for people to understand you coming and staying and like doing exactly their schedule. But that's also why I offer it. I'm like, hey, it's this much money, but I'm doing it exactly the way that you're asking me to do it. I have no questions about how you're doing your animals' care, but I promise to do it exactly how you do it so that they feel comfortable while you're away.
Yeah, and that's huge. I know when we offer just more of a traditional house sitting option for people, when we're able to explain that to them of no, it's your pet, your schedule, your house, their environment, you can see the gears start to turn and they start to realize like, oh wow, you're right. Like, okay, this is a little bit more expensive than if I took my dog to a kennel or something like that. But I see the whole package here, and I can tell even more so for doing farm sitting and large animal care for what you're doing of going, no, like it's almost as if you are still there because I'm there doing all the same things. And especially for somebody who is, very particular or have their animals have very specific needs, all of a sudden these benefits just start, really popping up for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could take your horse. I think some veterinarians do like boarding, like dogs and cats, but I think it's kind of the same thing. Like a lot of people bring their animals home and they're more stressed because they had to pack them up and take them somewhere else and then bring them back. They're not really sure what kind of care they got. Especially since in a vet hospital, there's 20 million things going on. Horses are in surgery or whatever. So it's not as relaxing as just staying in your environment. Cause I do think cows, maybe not as much, but horses definitely get stressed when their schedule is bumped around a little bit. So I appreciate it when, my horse is taken care of at the same times each day. So I know when I'm taking care of somebody else's animals that's important to them. So I think being able to have worked at a lot of farms and like worked with a lot of veterinarians, and I've worked at some equine assisted therapy programs, like it's just really cool to see how this animal can provide so many different services to the human that it's like me being able to farm sit is kind of giving back to those horses, and just they give their all 100%. Like I love being able to hang out with them and just watch and spend time with them for sure.
Well, talk to us a little bit more about that, about how you make those connections and how you start bonding with the horses, with the animals that you're caring for. Because when we go through that meet and greet process and when we start doing house sits or boarding, it takes a little bit for the animals, for the dogs to come around to us. So what's that look like whenever you start caring for a new horse for the first time?
Yeah, so I think with any house sit, you would, if you know a certain kind of animal and you've cleared it with the owner, right? The owner maybe has told you that Dobby likes certain treats. Maybe you pack those in your bag and bring them with you to either put in the animal's food or just hand feed them and be like, hey, I'm here. I'm a friend. It's going to be fine. I do think some horses are a little wary of new people, and then other horses are like, oh, great, you're here to feed me. Where's my food? They're pretty much like large dogs sometimes, or, any dog.
Yeah.
They have their little personalities for sure. But yeah, I try and kind of do that. So I'll carry some of the treats, or I'll make sure to stop at the feed store and pick some of those up. If they can't have carrots or apples, they make every single treat on the market for horses. So, I I do like to kind of, go out and in the field and put a halter on them and just pet them and talk to them a little bit. And it's the same if the cows are friendly, I'll go out and hang out with the cows a little bit. Chickens are fun, like especially if they're free range chickens and they just like hang out around the house. You can read to them. They really like that. Or you can play classical music. Chickens love music.
That's adorable.
It's very adorable. And having fresh eggs while you're there house sitting, that's awesome. But yeah, I'll hang out with all the animals, just kind of spend some extra time with them the first couple days so they do get comfortable and there's no stress. It seems to be like an animal gets stressed and then they get sick. So that's one of my biggest things. I don't want to have any type of stressful environment for them.
Yeah, making those transitions as smooth as possible. You mentioned it earlier about that can be some of the most stressful time for when you are transporting a pet. If they're going to boarding or coming from boarding, it's those multiple transitions in a pet's life and throughout the day. So coming in and trying to make those as smooth as possible with classical music or with treats and just being with them, like physically, emotionally, mentally being with them. Really, it goes a long way for a lot of unspoken or even maybe unfelt things on our end, but it just kind of gives us peace and reassurance for the pets and for the animals that we're around.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a good way to just orient yourself with the farm, like figuring out where everything is, like as you kind of rotate through the animals, like, oh, I noticed that there's this big shady place over here and it looks like Dobby will hang out at a certain time over here. Cause I've come out in the morning sometimes and I can't find the cows, but it just turned out that they were like hiding behind the group of hay bales, like in the way back of the pasture. So after that, I started doing full walkarounds of the property just to make sure I know the fence line. And should a storm happen, then I've looked at the fence line before and I'll go do it again and just make sure like, okay, everything is still in its place. But yeah, that was a fun lesson.
Oh, I can't I've lost all of the cows. This is wonderful. Yeah. Well, I can imagine, again, just the power of these simple things, the power of just paying attention, the power of taking a few moments to be observant, again, really go a long way in the quality of care that we're doing and in reassuring and giving confidence to the clients when we say, oh, we're able to do something, and then being able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're uncomfortable, with doing some of these things, like it's totally okay to say no. I really say that to a lot of people. Like if you feel that it's too much, just say so. I'd rather go into it with my eyes open than like only, one eye shut. So I think really focusing on what I can promise my clients and then, what I can deliver to them. And then, when they come home, it's, a Zen environment. That's what my goal is to provide for them. When they come home, I want them to just be able to kind of like, melt back into their schedule. It was like I was never there.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that thought process and of going, I know for us, like when we travel, coming back home, again, it's this big transition and there's always something else to do. And you're unpacking, you're doing laundry, you're folding, you're putting away, you're readjusting back to the life that you had before you left. And from a house sitting, from a farm sitting perspective, going, I want this to be as a seamless transition for them as possible so that they're not coming back into mayhem and chaos and they're able to just transition right back in and it's like nothing ever changed. And really striving to do that from day one, not trying to scramble on the last day. You're like, no, everything back to normal. It's a from day one process to make sure that stays moving forward.
Right. Yeah. And I do offer like in my rate, I do some light house cleaning. Like, of course I take out the trash and I get the mail and, just making sure, all the dishes, if I used any dishes or, did laundry or whatever, the sheets on the bed are clean and just little things like that. I think those are great touches. Taking out the trash, like I cannot tell you how many times people don't take out the trash and then you come home from a trip and it's just like awful. Like one of the worst things you can do is like leave the trash in the house because it just stinks. And so I do try, and I've had I have 2 cats, and so we do have a cat sitter that comes when we go out of town. And I've had some before that just didn't take out the trash or like forgot to close the door, and so my cats actually ate a whole loaf of bread.
Oh no.
It was awesome.
Awesome is not the word I would use for that.
Luckily they were fine.
Oh, good.
But it's just little things like that. And I feel like I'm a hard critic, right? Because I do it all, like I do professional house sitting, but just little things like that you learn along the way. Check all your doors.
You've talked a little bit about your background with horses and around the farm and some visiting vets and things like that. What kind of training or education would you say is necessary, or would you recommend for people interested in getting into farm care?
So for sure, I recommend if you're passionate about a certain livestock animal, if you can find, there's farms that are exclusively goat farms. If you have a passion for goats and like you want to learn all about how to take care of them and what their needs are and everything, there are just plenty of places for that, at least, in my neck of the woods. But there's always, if you ask your local veterinarian, like, hey, I want to get involved with large animals, they usually have a large animal veterinarian recommendation that they might refer out to, like if they get a call from somebody that doesn't have a large animal vet, or you can do a quick Google search and be like, hey, I'm looking to get some experience taking care of this animal. Like for me, it was horses. So I started working like in a barn, and I found a person that needed some extra help. And so I would come after school and on the weekends and clean stalls and like turn horses in and out, like help feeding them. And eventually you create this rapport with, the animals and the owner. And then she started teaching me how to ride. And like, so I learned all the ins and outs of like getting your horse's saddle on and the bridle and learning how to ride a horse and all of that neat stuff. And I just ate it up. So it's definitely something that you need to have a drive for. And if you go out there and you don't like it, like the smell is just awful to you, don't feel bad about saying no. Again, know your limits. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But really, if you're willing and like you are a self-starter and a go-getter, there's nobody that will turn you away to help them do farm work. And a lot of people are super nice. And they're more than happy to teach you.
Well, I'm sure too, just being open to all aspects of helping on a farm, because if your end goal is to do farm sitting and large animal care, you're going to be doing all aspects of that. So really embracing the whole process and asking those kind of questions and taking notes and just being observant will really, as you get more involved into it, like you said, like the smell, that's not really my thing. I like everything else but the smell. Well, okay, there are other things you can help with.
Right. Yeah, just being in the beginning like open to everything, even like water. I think water is a huge thing on a farm. In the summer, making sure everybody has enough water because they will drink more. But in the winter, like water also sucks because if you like get it on you, then you're cold. But like one of those necessary things that, animals need water. And so if it's, 25 degrees outside, you still have to go out there. If they don't have heaters in the water troughs, like make sure you know where the sledgehammer or the pickaxe is, because you're going to be unfreezing water troughs because they have to drink water. And we're the caretakers, so we have to make sure that they can get to what they need.
Yeah. And just, use that as an opportunity to get out your frustrations or angers about something that day, and use it as therapy, right?
Get a little workout in.
Do you require, or is there available special insurance for taking care of farms and being on these larger properties?
So most of the time when I go to meet the person, or if I have like a phone call with them first, I do ask about their farm insurance. A lot of, if they are actually farms and they have like an ag exemption and, all of their paperwork in order, they will have an insurance policy. And usually the umbrella will cover, if there's an accident on the property. I do carry my own insurance, just because I also ride horses, and that is a different activity in and of itself. So I do like to make sure that I'm always covered in that aspect. And should something happen, on the farm, then I have two insurances, with the umbrella policy and then my insurance. So I know that whatever happens to me, something will be covered.
I would never have even thought to ask about their farm insurance and whether that would cover incidents that occurred on there for caretakers or things like that. So those kind of questions, again, really go and can have a huge impact on how you're able to care, or if it's one that you're going to say yes to even.
Right. And some people do have a liability release. So that's kind of something that you'll have to decide. If they have you sign that, then they're not responsible if something happens to you on their property. So then that would be another reason that you'd carry your own insurance.
Right. Now, it's my understanding that you also have a full-time job that you're doing while you are doing farm sitting and large animal care. How do you find a balance between those two and still have a life outside of all of that?
A life? What's that?
It's a time when you're not. I don't really know. We'll find. Let me Google real quick. Hold on.
No, I do. Yep, I work in a 9-to-5 job, and with the pandemic and everything going on, I've been fortunate enough to work remote. And so it does give me a little bit of flexibility to be able to go and stay at these farms as long as there's a good Wi-Fi signal. I'm usually good to go. Since most of the things that I need to deliver and everything for my regular job are, only during certain hours, then I can kind of flex out for the farm sitting. I am upfront with both jobs. The farm sitting clients do know that I have a job, and then my job knows that I do the farm sitting. So I find that as long as everybody involved is aware, then you're in a better position. Like if something happened and I had to take an animal into the vet, like my job understands that. So I'm very fortunate.
And I'm sure that just, again, it's being honest, it's having open communication with people, and that genuinely never hurts a situation whenever you being upfront about both your abilities, both limitations, and other things that you're involved in, because that way nothing can come back on the back end and bite you in the butt or come back on you. You're always being honest, and you're always talking about, what the expectations are.
Right, exactly. It can't hurt to be honest. I mean, there have been multiple situations, farm sitting, where like I was feeding in the morning and I did not get a chance to get coffee in me, and I fed one horse another horse's food, but I immediately, caught myself and I called the owner and I told her. And so I was able to just monitor the horse. Luckily, nothing happened. Like, everyone was fine and I didn't have to take anybody to the vet, but it's just like, as soon as something happens and you catch it, being open and honest is always going to be better than like a couple hours into it, and the horse gets sick or, God forbid, has to have surgery or doesn't make it, it is on you because you are the one that was entrusted with their care. And I know, like, animals are unpredictable, right? So the horse could have eaten a plant in the field the day before too. Like, who knows?
Right.
But as long as, you are aware of what you're doing, and you're able to give the care. Everybody makes mistakes. We're still human. And I think that's a testament to my clients too. She didn't overreact or get upset with me. She just was like, it happens. And I remedied it and I moved the food around so that I wouldn't do it again. And it didn't happen again.
Yeah.
So
it is this instinct of, something bad happened. Let me see if there's going to be any repercussions of this before I go and I talk to my client about this or before I tell them. But like you said, you don't want it to progress to a certain point where you're hours into this and then something bad does happen because of something that you caught, right? Like, the earlier that you can tell a client, then the more you can be communicating on that. It really just helps out the entire process because then they know that you are trustworthy because it speaks to your character in those situations of what you will and what you won't tell a client.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that goes back to just knowing your clients and being able to figure out, if this is someone that I decide to take on as the client, like, will they give me some grace, or is it just kind of something where it's like I have to be on my game all the time? But we're all still human, and I think that that's something you have to think about when you're doing the meet and greets and everything. Like, am I going to match this owner's personality? Maybe not. But there's nothing wrong, with you or with me. I always think about that. I'm like, well, I just think it might be too much for me right now. Maybe, and even down the road, sometimes I have people that come back to me and they're like, hey, I know that I talked to you a couple months ago and you said no, but like, I've changed some things. Would you be willing to come back out and see if it's something you can do?
Well, and there again, right? When you are saying no and saying, oh, no, well, this and this and this is not something that I'm able to do. That way they know that when something changes, they know who to reach out to, right? And you've gained a client because of that. So gaining a client from saying no is kind of counterintuitive to the way a lot of us think about that process. But again, when you are saying, I know what I do, I know how I do it, and if that's not something that aligns with you, that's fine. But when you explain that to a client, that becomes part of this education process. And then, as you have experienced, when the client goes, oh, I changed this thing and now I check all of your boxes, you have now gained a client that you're going to fit with.
Yeah, exactly.
Pet Perennials makes it easy as 123 to send a heartfelt condolence gift directly to someone with a broken heart. Megan and I have used this several times in our business, and they really make it so simple. They have this awesome direct client gift service that takes the effort off of us and ensures a thoughtful, personalized sympathy gift reaches a client or employee. All gift packages include a handwritten card, colorful gift wrap, and shipping fees across the US and Canada. They will be releasing an array of milestone gifts and greeting cards throughout the rest of the year that can be sent to celebrate birthdays, extend get well wishes, and welcome new or rescued pets. They also have a few gift options in case you need to send a sympathy gift in memory of a special human client. If you're interested, register for a free account to receive discounted package pricing rather than pay consumer prices. Since the service is leveraged on an as-need basis, there is no monthly or annual obligation or minimum purchase. Learn more and register using the link petperennials.com/pages/GPS. Then enter the referral code PSC at registration. You'll be given a unique coupon code to save $2 off any packages that you send in your first 90 days. I'm curious, never a dull moment. on a farm in these processes. So what's one of your most memorable experiences?
Oh goodness. I was actually doing a farm sit. I don't know if you remember, Texas had that big power outage, right? And it snowed.
Yeah.
And so we lost power. And the house, it was a huge house. And luckily, they just had the dogs and a cat, and there wasn't any extra livestock. But yeah, we were on the rotating power schedule, and luckily they had a gas fireplace, so that was on like 24/7, and I was there like a week, so the entire time the power was out, and it was like 30 degrees in the house. And I was trying, every time the power would come on, I would try and put heaters on all the pipes. And the owners were actually in Hawaii. So we couldn't even come home. So I slept on the ground like a couple nights with the dogs in front of the fireplace because it was cold. And it was awesome. I mean, it was hard, but I think it would have been harder if I had had like horses, cows, because there was a lot of my clients that were out of power and they didn't have water. So they were like lugging water from their like stock tanks or pools to feed their animals. So I got lucky that I just had the inside animals, but it was crazy. But none of the pipes froze. The house, like when the power came back on the day I left, and like everything heated back up, and they came home and they said that neighbors on both sides of them, they had multiple pipes burst in their house, but nothing was wrong with their house.
Hey, there you go. That's a A+ on smooth transitions for clients coming home. No burst pipes. That's about as awesome as you can give them. It's almost a present of giving them when they come back through those kind of situations.
Well, it's crazy because in Texas, we don't get those temperatures. Like it was, 6-7 degrees outside. So it was just wild. And I'm a Southern girl. So I was wearing like all the clothes that I brought, and I don't do cold well, but it was definitely one for the memories. And I don't drive in the snow, and I had to leave the house and there was still like snow and ice on the ground. So it was, I only lived like 15 minutes away from this house, but it took me like 40 to drive home because I was driving so slow. So scared. But I don't really do snow, ice, but anything else I'm fine. Like hail, tornadoes, it's all good, but not snow. Do you want me to tell the other one?
Yeah, absolutely.
I stayed at a farm, and they had 30 chickens, a horse, 3 cows, and 2 dogs. And I was out in the pool, and there were some trucks driving up. Well, they have alarms on their driveway. So like if somebody drives on the driveway, you'll know because you'll hear the bells in the house. And I was staying there, by myself, and I wasn't expecting anybody. And someone drove up. And so I got out, and there was a guy walking up, and he said that he needed to take some pictures, to look at landmarks of where the property line was. And he didn't have a card, and he didn't have anything. So I immediately called the owner, and I told him, I was like, look, you're not allowed on the property. I don't have I can't give you permission to come on the property. So he left, and then he came back the next day.
Ooh.
So I know this house had protection and everything, and the dogs were barking crazy, and he didn't even come to the door this time. He just walked straight back onto the property. So I actually ended up calling the cops, and I called the owner again, and this time he gave me a card, and it was a handwritten card that said that he was a land surveyor.
Oh no. What?
And I said, I've called the police, and the owner has said that you're not allowed on his property. So you will be arrested. And he looked at me and like kind of looked around, and he ran down to his truck and sped down the driveway. And I didn't see him again, but the police, they came and I told them what happened, and they said that there was a man that was doing that to a couple of farms in the area, like said he was a surveyor and he needed to take pictures of the property line, but they're like, we can't figure out who he works for or like what he's doing. So that was crazy.
Yeah, that's
and
really...
I slept with like all the lights on in the house for the rest of the house sit.
Yeah, that's really unnerving, right? To think of not just what's going on out there like while you're sleeping, but just to like have that confrontation or meet somebody and just have it make no sense at all. And even the cops be like, we don't even know what this guy's doing, right? Like, that's so bizarre.
Yeah. And the house owner, like, I felt so bad for them because I was like, yeah, there's like somebody trying to come onto your property. So they did end up telling me like where an extra lock was for the gate. So I put a lock on the gate, like if I was there, and then I left and everything. So, but yeah, it's just crazy. Like the stuff that you see out in the country, I guess it could happen to anybody, but I was like, well, I guess it's just another thing. I'm thankful that, it was one of those things where I was able to just kind of tell the guy that I'd called the police and he left.
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason I like to know, who's in the area, like the sheriff or police and the fire department and all of that. And I told the neighbor next door. And so he was keeping an eye out since they shared the driveway. So
I know in pet care and dog walking and pet sitting, continuing education and learning more and getting more resources is always a big thing. So I was curious, where do you go for more information on farm animals and staying up to date on the latest care information out there?
I do have a really good relationship with my large animal veterinarian. She and I actually talk a lot about multiple different things. Even if, my horse is healthy or whatever, I'll ask her questions about cows and goats or what have you. And just be out of curiosity because I like to continue learning. And so we'll meet up for dinner like once or twice a month and just like talk about all these different things. So I know everybody can't have that, but if you're really interested and you want to learn about the anatomy or what that animal eats or whatever, there's always books and stuff like that. But I mean, I can't stress enough, like if you want to go to a vet clinic, they are more than happy to take you on as a volunteer. If you're interested in becoming a vet tech, a lot of clinics will offer you the ability to get the training you need. They're super awesome about that. If you find a good clinic, definitely ask them about like continuing education programs. There are multiple groups actually on Facebook that will do like little weekend activities, especially with the pandemic. I think it's a little bit you have to RSVP now, but they'll do like days at the lake where you can come and people will bring their animals and like talk to you about how they feed them and care for them and stuff like that. So that's really cool. I know that that's only in North Texas right now. I don't know about other rural areas, but yeah, I think the internet it's amazing most of the time. Just be careful and make sure that it is like a sanctioned event. So if it's like 4-H or the the horse one is the United States Equestrian Federation. So just make sure there's some sort of backing behind it, and you're not just going to like some random person's house. That's not safe. So just know.
Yeah. Well, it's focusing on those relationships again, relationships not just with our clients and with potential clients, but with groups and with vets and vet clinics, to continue expanding our knowledge and growing our community and growing our network, right? So that you do have somewhere to go and someplace to turn, because you can watch YouTube videos and you can Google to your heart's content, but you do have to ground truth a lot of that information, and having a vet or a clinic that you can go to and have conversations with really does help solidify a lot of the information out there.
Yeah, and there are tons of shelters too, like I know that the ASPCA, they do horses as well. And like I think they have other livestock too. Like some have cows. So I know that they're always looking for volunteers and people to help them. Or, the Humane Society gets horses in quite a bit, like owner surrenders or foreclosures or something. So that would be a great place as well.
Ariah, I want to thank you for coming on the show today and shedding light on a part of the industry that many of us aren't aware of or didn't even know that it was a thing, and for sharing some stories and for encouraging us to go and get connected with those around us. But I know that there's a lot more information, and there's going to be a lot more questions that are very particular to certain people that they may have. So how can people best get connected with you and start picking your brain?
Yeah, for sure. Email is probably the best way right now. It's Ariah, ARIAH .wolf, WOLFE @gmail.com. And that way they can write me a book or just write me a short note, and I'm happy to answer any and all livestock, farm related questions. But yeah, I'm always happy to talk to anybody about farms.
Awesome. And I encourage that. I know we kind of did a 30,000-foot view of what it's like to be a farm sitter and a little bit of the ins and outs, but there are a lot of particulars, and especially with your background with horses and that side of it, that's a real need. I know we have people around us that ask questions about horses, and I know nothing about them. So I think that
you've come to the right place.
Yes. Perfect. So Ariah, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My 3 big takeaways from my conversation with Ariah were: 1, being kind really does go a long way. We tend to forget how our simple interactions with people on a day-to-day basis, on how we wave to neighbors, on how we interact with our clients, that sets the standard, that sets their understanding of who we are as people, and really does start to build our reputation. We've talked about that a lot on the show recently, about the importance of maintaining our reputation, and that all begins with being kind to those around us. Second big takeaway was that chickens love classical music. Not much more than that. It was just a really interesting tidbit that I learned. And then thirdly is that preparing never looks the same from sit to sit and from person to person. We can never prepare for all the instances or for every kind of possibility. What it looks like to prepare for the sits that you do look very different from somebody else, because we are all processing different information. We have all had different past experiences that build into that network and that system of how we approach those kind of problems. But at the end of the day, the important part is to prepare, period, is to have something in place. Just think through possible scenarios and different situations so that we can be a little bit ahead of the game. It might not be exactly what we prepared for, but at least we've been in that mindset, and we've put ourselves in that situation to start understanding how things might go wrong and how we would respond to that. We want to thank our sponsors, Time to Pet and Pet Perennials, for making today's show possible. And thank you so much for listening. We really, really do appreciate it. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be back again soon.